Somewhere in Omaha, Nebraska, right now, there's a man worth over $160 billion. That number is so large it barely means anything when you just hear it out loud. $160 billion. He could buy almost any car ever made, in any color, in any quantity, without noticing the dent in his bank account. And yet, for years, this man drove a Cadillac that was old enough to vote. His daughter had to step in and basically tell him, "Dad, this is getting embarrassing. It's time for a new car." And even then, he didn't go pick out something flashy. He let his daughter handle it, upgraded to another Cadillac, and kept driving that one for years afterward too. This man is Warren Buffett, and today we're going to talk about why one of the richest human beings on the planet chooses to live like this. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. And I think by the end of this video, it might genuinely change the way you think about your own relationship with money. Let's start by making this feel real, because billionaire is a word we throw around so casually now that it's lost its weight. Warren Buffett's net worth has been estimated at various points between $100 and $170 billion, depending on the year and how Berkshire Hathaway's stock is performing. To put that in perspective, if he spent $1 million every single day, it would take him roughly 400 years to run out of money. 400 years. He could have started spending $1 million a day back when the Mughal Empire still ruled parts of India, and he still wouldn't be broke today. And with that kind of money, here's what Warren Buffett actually does. He still lives in the same house in Omaha that he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Adjusted for inflation, that's somewhere around $280,000 to $340,000 in today's money. It's a 5-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom home, completely respectable, but it is absolutely positively not a billionaire's mansion. There's no gate with 12 security guards. There's no private helicopter pad. It's a house in a normal neighborhood, the same house he raised his 3 kids in, the same house he said he wouldn't trade for anything. And the car situation is even more striking. For years, Buffett drove a 2006 Cadillac DTS, a perfectly fine car, but nothing close to what someone with his net worth could afford without thinking twice. It had racked up a mere 19,000 miles, because here's the other detail. Buffett only drives about 3,500 miles a year. That's it. A man who could buy an entire fleet of Bugattis drives less than the average person drives to and from work in 6 months. Here's where the story gets genuinely funny, and also tells you a lot about who Buffett actually is underneath the net worth. His daughter, Susie, eventually stepped in and basically said the car situation had become embarrassing enough that it was time for an upgrade. Buffett didn't fight it, but he also didn't go pick out the car himself. He let Susie handle the entire purchase the way he always has. She got him a 2014 Cadillac XTS, and true to form, he kept that one for years afterward too. When asked directly about this, Buffett gave an answer that honestly sounds like something your frugal grandfather would say, except this grandfather happens to be one of the most successful investors in human history. He said, quote, referring to buying a new car, "If I could write a check in 30 seconds and be in the same position I'm in now with a newer car, I'd be glad to do it this afternoon. But I don't like to trade away time when there's really no benefit to me at all." Think about that phrasing for a second. He's not saying he can't afford a new car. He's saying the new car offers him zero actual benefit over the one he already has. So why would he waste his time on it? For Buffett, the constraint was never money. It was ever having a reason. And this wasn't just a one-off thing with cars. Buffett has been known to specifically buy cars with hail damage, not because he's trying to save every last dollar, but because a hail-damaged car functions exactly the same as a pristine one, it just costs less. His daughter said in a documentary that the family basically has an understanding. You've got to understand, he keeps cars until I tell him, this is getting embarrassing, time for a new car. He's not choosing this out of necessity. He's choosing it because to him, the extra money spent on a newer, shinier version simply doesn't buy him anything he actually values. Now, if the car story sounds surprising, the breakfast routine might genuinely shock you. Warren Buffett, worth over $100 billion, has a well-documented habit of stopping at McDonald's on his 5-minute drive to work most mornings. And it's not just that he goes to McDonald's, it's how he decides what to order that's fascinating. Depending on how the stock market is doing that day, Buffett adjusts his order. If he's feeling rich, he'll splurge on a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, which costs about $3.89. If the market is down that morning, he scales back to a sausage, egg, and cheese sandwich for $3.19. And on what he calls a really bad day, meaning the market took a hit, he buys 2 plain sausage patties, puts them together himself to make his own makeshift sandwich, and washes it down with a Coke he pours himself, spending as little as $2.38. Let that sink in for a moment. a man whose daily investment decisions can move billions of dollars, is genuinely adjusting his breakfast budget, a budget measured in cents, based on how the market performed that morning. This isn't a publicity stunt. This is a decades-long, consistent habit, confirmed repeatedly by people who've actually had breakfast with him. He even took Microsoft founder Bill Gates to McDonald's once instead of some five-star restaurant, and famously pulled out coupons to help cover the bill, while Gates reportedly couldn't stop laughing. Here's one more detail that captures exactly who Buffett is. For years, and we're talking well into the era when smartphones had completely taken over, Buffett continued using an old flip phone. Not because he couldn't afford an iPhone, not because he didn't understand the technology. He simply didn't see the point in upgrading something that already did everything he needed it to do. He finally switched to an iPhone in February of 2020, and even then, it wasn't really his decision. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, personally gave him one. And it's worth noting, Berkshire Hathaway, Buffett's company, owns a massive stake in Apple. So in some sense, even his phone upgrade was connected back to an investment decision rather than a lifestyle one. Left entirely to his own preferences, Buffett would likely have kept that flip phone running for another decade. Now here's the real question this video is actually trying to answer. Not just, what does Buffett do? But why? Because it would be easy to write this off as some kind of eccentric billionaire quirk, a rich man's cosplay of modesty. But if you actually listen to what Buffett has said about this over the years, a much clearer philosophy emerges. At a Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting in 2014, Buffett said something that cuts right to the core of this entire mindset. He said, quote, "I do not think that standard of living equates with cost of living beyond a certain point." And then he went further. "My life would not be happier. It'd be worse if I had 6 or 8 houses or a whole bunch of different things I could have. It just doesn't correlate." Read that carefully, because it's not a humble brag. It's a genuinely researched, well-supported idea. Buffett is essentially saying that past a certain threshold, more spending doesn't create more happiness. It just creates more stuff to manage, more decisions to make, more complexity in a life that could otherwise be simple. He's not avoiding luxury because he's morally opposed to it. He's avoiding it because from decades of lived experience at the absolute top of the wealth pyramid, he's concluded that it genuinely doesn't move the needle on his own happiness. There's also a deeper, more strategic layer to this. Buffett didn't become one of the greatest investors of all time by accident. His entire philosophy is built around understanding the true cost of things, including the opportunity cost of money spent rather than invested. Every dollar he doesn't spend on a flashy car, a mega mansion, or unnecessary upgrades is a dollar that stays invested, compounding, working for him. Buffett has said, "If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die." And that mindset extends beyond just his investment picks. It shapes how he sees consumption itself. Every unnecessary purchase isn't just money spent. In his mind, it's compounding potential lost. A man who has spent his entire career thinking in terms of decades-long compounding growth naturally starts to see every expense through that same lens. Not, can I afford this? But, what does this actually cost me in terms of what that money could have become? Now, if all of this makes Buffett sound like a hoarder obsessed with saving every last penny, here's the part of the story that completely flips that assumption. Warren Buffett is one of the most generous philanthropists who has ever lived. He has donated more than $46 billion since the year 2000, not million, billion with a B. He co-created something called the Giving Pledge alongside Bill and Melinda Gates, which now has over 200 of the world's wealthiest people committing to give away the majority of their fortunes. So this isn't a story about a man who's afraid to spend money or who values money for its own sake. It's the opposite. Buffett clearly understands that money has enormous power. He's just chosen to direct almost all of that power outward, toward causes and people beyond himself, rather than inward, toward personal luxury. The same man who buys hail-damaged Cadillacs and eats $2 breakfasts has given away tens of billions of dollars to help other people. That combination, personally frugal, publicly and privately generous on a scale almost nobody can match, is what makes his story so different from the typical image people have of what being extremely wealthy is supposed to look like. So what does any of this mean for someone who isn't worth $160 billion? I think the lesson here isn't don't ever buy nice things or live like a monk no matter how much money you have. That would be missing the point entirely. The real lesson is about the relationship between spending and satisfaction. Buffett figured out decades ago exactly where his own personal spending stopped adding real value to his life. And once he found that ceiling, he simply stopped chasing more past it. Most people never actually run that experiment on themselves. They just keep assuming the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next bigger version of something will finally deliver the satisfaction the last one didn't quite provide. Buffett already ran that experiment, at a scale most of us will never reach, and came out the other side concluding that beyond a certain point, it simply doesn't work that way. And here's the financially practical version of that same lesson, without needing $100 billion to test it yourself. Every rupee, every dollar you don't spend on something that doesn't genuinely add value to your life is a rupee or dollar that gets to keep compounding, keep growing, keep working for your actual future. Instead of depreciating the moment you drive it off a lot, or becoming obsolete the moment the next model launches, Buffett isn't frugal because he's poor in spirit. He's frugal because he clearly understood, better than almost anyone in history, what money is actually for, and a shinier car was never on that list. So the next time you're standing in a showroom or scrolling through the newest phone release or feeling that pull to upgrade something that's still working perfectly fine, it might be worth asking yourself the exact question Buffett seems to have already answered for himself. Does this actually add something real to my life? Or am I just trading away money, and maybe even time, for something that offers no real benefit at all? One of the richest men who has ever lived drives an old Cadillac, eats a $2 breakfast depending on how the market did that morning, and used a flip phone until Apple's CEO personally handed him an iPhone. And somehow, by his own account, he's happier for it. Not despite the money he didn't spend, but because of the clarity that comes from knowing exactly what actually matters and what doesn't. If this story changed how you think about your own spending even a little, let me know in the comments. And if you want more real, deeply researched stories like this one, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.